Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto is a hybrid. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. Risavim Levon Lucifer was not considered to be an overly ambitious man for most of his life, tending to be childish and insulting even to his fellow great devils. That had all changed though. These days it would be hard to find a more ambitious devil, high-born or otherwise, but with all power and ambition, there came times when he wondered if it was all worth it. And as you could probably imagine, in a few thousand years, there were many times he thought this. Times when all the work and planning seemed useless and as though the world was crumbling around him. He didn't like it when he felt such fear. Emotions like that were useless to him and only brought scorn from his other conspirators. But, surely if they knew what was going on now, they would feel the same way. And as it was, all those other times were about to fade into insignificance. Dressed in the Devil Lord equivalent of casual wear, Risavim stored through the majestic halls of his castle. Well, this particular wing of his home was not strictly his. This portion of the Lucifer estate belonged to his cousin. She had living here for the better part of 17 years, ever since she got pregnant. Since then, she had caused a never-ending list of problems, and most of them didn't even have the dubious honor of being easy to deal with. Risavim smoothed a hand though his hair in annoyance. He really wanted to strangle her at the moment. But, unfortunately, he was in no position to do so. After all, how was he supposed to strangle someone who could kill him with a flick of her wrist? Yeah, he wasn't planning on making any moves on her, violent or otherwise. Taking a deep breath to steady his nerves, Risavim pushed open the door to her personal chambers and entered, black cloak billowing in his wake. And there she was. He stopped in front of her, clearing his throat to speak, but she beat him to it. "I am not in the mood, Vim-kun. Another time perhaps?" Her voice was sweet but low for a woman of her size, and it carried the weight of power. She didn't even bother to look up at him, instead preferring to scribble over a large scroll which was draped over a table. "Kushina, we need to talk now," he said with a bit of urgency. "This cannot wait for later." Her red lips tightened as she finished whatever notes she was taking. She sighed and put down her pencil, standing straight. Kushina was tall, with dark red hair which fell around her in a crimson curtain. It easily brushed the floor if it was unstyled. At the moment, however, it was released in all its glory. A sigh escaped her as she pulled her own small hands though her hair, managing to make the movement far more elegant than he could. Kushina's piercing blue eyes flashed with irritation while she crossed her arms under her considerable bust. Risavim used all his considerable force of will not to look at her bare breasts. His cousin wasn't a fan of clothes and often went in the nude when in her own private chambers, but that wouldn't stop her from tearing an arm or a leg off if she caught him looking. She was vehemently anti-pervert. "Well, if it's so important, say it already." She growled low in her throat, startling him into action. "Ah, yes. The Chaos Brigade members under Orpheus's direct leadership have captured another member of the Yokai's people. He's one of the four-tailed foxes. A low-ranked member of the group, but he has considerable stores of power. I wanted to incorporate." His voice was cut off mid-speech as his cousin forced her delicate hand through his armor and into his chest cavity, her slender fingers clutching around his heart even as it beat. Her voice was cold and furious. "I've warned you already. You will address my son with the respect he is due or I will rip your heart out and eat it." "Of course," he gasped in agony as she ripped her hand free, splashing bright red blood over her pale skin. She hissed at him, showing razor-sharp fangs. "Remember who inherited the power of Lucifer. You are a weak and spoiled child with only a fraction of my strength." Kushina used her devil magic to burn the blood from her skin. It flaked off, leaving her as spotless as before. A second passed as his wounds slowly closed over. Her attack was not meant to injure him, only to punish him for his speaking out of turn. He gasped again as Kushina proceeded to backhand him, sending a loud snap through the room. "My son is already powerful enough without your tampering. He doesn't require any more chakra abilities, or yokai magic at all for that matter." She spat. "Now, unless you are going in to see him, then get out of my sight." "You pathetic excuse for a devil lord." Risavim rose to his feet, using one hand to pop his neck back into the proper placement. He was used to this harsh treatment from his cousin by now. It wasn't as if his power wasn't great enough to ignore most damage she dealt. Only her magic could harm him. No amount of physical strength would kill one as strong as he was. I will see the boy then and be gone afterwards, he said hesitantly. Sometimes she wouldn't allow him to see his heir, even when she said he could. After all, she was extremely protective of him. Risavim didn't personally understand how she could be worried for him. The brat was damned near indestructible. His father had seen to that. Kushina snarled at him, but quickly reined in her bloodthirst. Risavim once again reminded himself not to anger her. It was just so hard not to be his usual insulting self. He enjoyed the banter between opponents. But his cousin, along with that whole side of the family, were dangerous to joke with. He didn't even want to think how painful it would be for him if Kushina's son had half as much of a temper. Makes me just that much more glad that he's taking after his father, even if he was a half-breed bastard. Although he seems to be picking up a few bad habits from his godfather. Guess that's unavoidable though, he muttered under his breath as he moved past his cousin, keeping a good distance between them. His mind once again returned to the mystery that was her side of the family. Kushina was what the current Devil Kings referred to as a perfect devil. Someone who not only had unsurpassed power, but also embodied the teachings and views of devil kind. She was almost 6,000 years old, quite a bit younger than him. Yes, quite a bit, but her power was also quite beyond his own. It all had something to do with an ancient contract with the original Lucifer. The very first Lucifer had claimed that his power would be passed down through his family, but it would gather unequally among his children. Only those who were found to be worthy would gain a large portion of his power. Thus, even though he could trace his own lineage directly to the founding father of Hell, his distant cousin had much more power. In fact, she had almost 10 times as much power as he did. While he calculated that he inherited 3% of his predecessor's power, she took 30%. He wasn't necessarily angry with her over it, despite being a bit jealous. She was just a pure-blood royal like him, just as fit to have it. But it did cause problems. For instance, when she married a half-human, half-vampire hybrid named Minato Namikaze and had a mixed-blood son. Her offspring was half-devil, 1/4 human, and 1/4 vampire. And not just any vampire either. He was from the House of Vosk, a side branch of Valdi family. Risavim knew that the boy was an abomination. As if being half-vampire wasn't bad enough, but to have human blood, it disgusted him. However, he had his uses, and more importantly he had his sacred gear. The mightiest non-Longinus he'd ever encountered. It compared well with even against the strongest of the 13 great artifacts. It was called Demon's Eye, Maelstrom Absorption. He had no delusions about what the boy could do to him, and so he was forced to play nice with him. After all, Naruto had the highest concentration of Lucifer's power ever seen. He was the legitimate heir to the throne, above Sirzex and the rest of his traitorous family. Above even himself. Curse that boy's luck. It's as if heaven itself bestowed its greatest miracle upon him, giving him such power. Risavim closed his eyes. A loud knock at the boy's bedroom door. Then another. Risavim frowned and turned the door handle, entering the large chamber beyond. Shit. Kushina came running. What is it? She demanded. Kushina and Risavim stood in the doorway and looked. Rias Gremory pinched the bridge of her nose in irritation, mostly because their homeroom teacher was late, and that meant that she was sitting in class, doing nothing, while her peerage's familiars worked to increase the amount of paperwork that weighed down the desk in the Orc Club room. Paperwork which she would have to deal with sooner or later. She couldn't keep putting it off in favor of observing her target. No, she needed to keep up on her own duties as well as looking out for new members of her peerage. But it was just so boring. Nothing happened here these days, at least nothing to interest the young Gremory heir. At that moment there was a commotion from outside the hall. Students look up to see the teacher walking in. He was a fairly short man, with spiky brown hair, pulled back in a ponytail. He had a long scar over the bridge of his nose. Rias knew it was from his previous job as a kendo instructor. Something to do with an overzealous student. His name was Iruka and he was, without a doubt, the most unassuming teacher she'd ever seen. However, standing next to him was, probably the polar opposite of him. Her eyes took in his appearance as Iruka introduced him to the class. Good morning everyone, we have a new transfer student today. He was tall, easily 6 feet, with tanned skin and golden blonde hair. It was very unruly, as if nothing stood a chance of taming it. He's coming from America of all places. So he might need a bit of time to adjust. I hope you all get along with him." The young man, whose mischievous blue eyes were shining out from underneath his hair, bowed slightly to the class. "Hey everyone. My name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. I hope you'll all be willing to be my friends in the near future," he finished on a low note which sent shivers up several spines. His voice was rich and purring like nothing they'd heard before. It almost seemed to resonate around the room. No, it did resonate around them, deep and commanding. His confident smile showed long sharp canines and shining white teeth. Rias noticed that he had 3 black marks on either cheek, like whiskers. They lent him a roguish appearance, which was already reinforced by his elegant bow. All around the class Rias heard whispers burst like overfull balloons, girls chatting between each other at the new student. She imagined that the room heated up a bit, as though all the girls, and even 1 or 2 of the boys needed to fan themselves. Naruto straightened and glanced to the teacher. "Where would you like me to sit, sensei?" he asked with a slight smirk. Rias glanced around as half the class sighed dreamily. She didn't really know what to make of it, but one thing was for sure, Kiba was going to have to fight for his title now. Pretty boy number 2 had officially arrived, and boy was he a fine piece of eye candy. She had to admit he was the best looking boy she'd seen this side of the underworld. She was sure that if she was human, she'd be just like all the other fangirls at that moment, swooning over his beauty. Rias turned around to look at Akano, who was smiling at Naruto, obviously disrobing him with her eyes. Akano, really? She supposed she couldn't blame her queen for admiring his looks, as long as she didn't try and get him to join the peerage. She didn't have room for just anyone. "Well, Naruto, you can take that seat there, next to Tsubaki," Iruka said. "Tsubaki, would you raise your hand?" Naruto's gaze turned to the girl who sat near the back. Tsubaki's hand rose and Naruto nodded, moving over to the desk and sitting down. "She can also show you around the school and tell you how things work around here. She's a member of the student council and she knows how we operate." Iruka turned to the rest of the class. "Now I believe it's time to get this day started. Everyone open your Algebra 2 textbook to page 76. Rias pulled her eyes away from the new student and opened her math book. Unbeknownst to her, Naruto's blue eyes turned in her direction. Naruto watched the girl with the crimson hair out of the corner of his eye. She was beautiful. He'd never seen many girls before, even though his godfather had been very informative on the subject. The only girls he was really acquainted with were his few relatives and his mother. And the maids, but they didn't count. He could feel that she was a devil. And he could easily sense that there were at least 3 others in the room. The girl, Tsubaki, was certainly one of them, and so was the alluring dark-haired one sitting a few seats behind him. And there was something off about her besides being a devil. He wasn't sure what it was, but he would find out. Maybe I can actually have some fun now. I've spent my whole life cooped up in that stupid castle without being able to leave. It wasn't so bad when Dad was still around, but as soon as he was gone, Risavim and the others started messing with me and my sacred gear. It's a good thing Mom kept them from doing anything too drastic, but damn. It's good to be out of there. He smiled and glanced at his book, already open on the table. None of this was hard. Child's play. I could do this whole book in a day. Wouldn't even have to bother with scratch paper. In hindsight, he might need to tone his abilities down slightly. He doubted if it would be wise to reveal that he could do complex mathematical equations in his head instantly. Such an act would draw unnecessary attention to himself. Then again, I still want to have a good time, and you can't drink blood without piercing the flesh. I'll need to talk to these devils before they go and report anything strange. Naruto's smile turned noticeably feral. I wonder if I should try my hand at seducing some of these girls. That would be a challenge. He channeled minute amounts of vampiric energy into his nose, heightening his sense of smell by 100 times normal. Immediately he was able to pinpoint the last devils in the room. A shorter girl, with dark hair and pale skin who sat in the front row. Naruto realized that she and Tsubaki had some kind of connection to each other. Maybe Tsubaki is part of her peerage. And if that is true, then I'd also be willing to bet that the strange devil girl who is so aroused right now is teamed with the redhead. I think I'll try my hand at getting close to those two before I make direct contact with them. See how long it takes them to realize their servants are mine. Naruto pulled his power in around himself a bit tighter. No point in trying to hunt the two girls if he revealed himself as a supernatural being. And the fun begins. Kushina stared at the empty room. Her son was nowhere to be found. And as far as she knew, that could only mean one thing. He'd made good on his promise to get out. She honestly didn't blame him. His blood burned too hot to be contained inside the castle for long, and he'd been itching to get out for years. She just wished now that she'd been overseeing it. There was no telling how much trouble he could get in unsupervised. He was a prodigy in every sense of the word, smart and quick to learn, twice as clever as the average devil, and 4 times as manipulative. He was relatively unambitious, but at the same time, when something caught his interest, he was as stubborn as a dragon. She wasn't at all sure what he was up to. He could be in the underworld, the human realm, wandering the dimensional rift. Anything really. The only place she didn't think her son would get into was heaven. She hoped to Satan that he didn't try to get into heaven. If he did try, it wouldn't be too long before he succeeded. And she really didn't want that particular headache. Beside her, Risavem was having a panic attack over his disappearance. And for good reason too. He was their secret weapon, the trump card against the new Devil Kings. If Naruto was gone, then so was any chance of them defeating the leaders of the new Devil faction. Risavem wasn't stupid, as much as he acted like it. He knew that Searsex could kill him easily. Likewise, the old Leviathan and Beelzebub knew how weak they were in comparison to their new counterparts, dangerously so. Naruto was crucial to their plans. His abilities were the key to defeating such powerful opponents without suffering great losses. But, if the blonde hybrid vanished, there was no way they could influence him, not that she let them do that. Naruto had complete faith in her, and she refused to let her cousin or his allies taint him. Her husband and Jiraiya were bad enough. We have to get him back. Risavem shouted. She smacked him into a wall. How do you intend on doing that? Even I can't track him if he used my husband's techniques to escape. We will have to wait until he shows himself or causes enough of a stir to hone in on. Ow. Shit, why'd you hit me? The others are going to throw a fit. He shouted. Kushina used a sizable magic circle to summon one of her servants. A moment later, a slender woman was standing before her. Find my son. Search the underworld from top to bottom. Get the others if you need help. If you can't find him, check over the human realm. She waved her hand and his servant vanished in a flash of red. As for you, she sighed, turning to Risavem. You need to learn that my son doesn't belong to you, or even me. He is first and foremost a free devil. Your group is fortunate that he didn't leave sooner. With that she left the room, a small smile hovering about her lips now. It wasn't a bad thing for her son to be out in the world. Maybe he'd find a few servants of his own, or even a mate. Who could know? He was the strongest descendant of Lucifer to date, anything could happen. Better yet, he might make contact with a few fellow devils. If he allied himself with the new devil faction, then she would at last be able to reconcile with Ajuka and Searsex. Kushina blocked out the annoying rants of her cousin. She really would kill him one day. If he didn't get killed by someone else sooner. Naruto smirked. Watching the members of the Orc go about their daily business was interesting. They were obviously devils, as he'd already found out, but it seemed like they were all part of the same peerage. And that of course meant that the other girls were from a second one. It was curious, seeing how devils were very territorial normally. To have 2 different peerages, of 2 separate high-class devils in the same school was, well, curious. He didn't know how they got along. He rarely found any common ground with other devils. His mother obviously didn't count, and neither did his godfather. He despised Risavem and his cronies, cohorts, whatever they were. So to see almost a dozen devils interacting in a peaceful manner without conflict was simply amazing. Risavem never got through a conversation without breaking something, or someone. His mother didn't either for that matter. But other than that he was content. It wasn't boring here like it was at home. Here there was a flurry of activity. Everyone neatly organized and studious. It reminded him of the video games he used to play. The cool strategy ones his dad gave him when he was little. Everything could be micromanaged with only a little effort on his part. He found to his surprise that his uncle's arch-enemy was rather popular here. Seeing how the head of the Orc Club was Rias Gremory, and that made her the sister of Searsex, who was about Risavem's least favorite person, other than him. And on the other side of the school was Sona Seatree, who was the little sister to Seraphal Leviathan. Now that had been icing on the cake. If he could make friends with these two powerful peerages, well, not very powerful by his standards, then he could get back as the stupid Chaos Brigade and all the idiots who hated him. Risavem, his fellow old farts, the old devil faction, and the rest of the stuck-up arrogant bastards who thought he was some tool. They would all be having heart attacks at the moment. And when he allied himself with their enemies' sisters, show them who the boss is. He'd even enjoy it. Getting close to the two peerages would be entertaining and challenging, at least he hoped so. While he figured he wouldn't be bored for a while, he wished that the devils would at least make it hard for him. He always loved to worm his way into the middle of things. A little disorder never hurt anyone. Naruto scratched at the small of his back. He was getting a bit uncomfortable in the tree he was hiding in. So that meant it was time to make some mischief. Sona grumbled to herself about a certain, soon-to-be pawn, who was being a royal pain in her ass. Saji was just so immature. And he was a closet pervert. If it wasn't for his honor, there would be a perverted quartet instead of a trio. And she'd still have to deal with his eccentricities. Behind her, Tsubaki walked at attention. Her queen had just finished showing the new student around the school and explaining how everything worked. He'd taken it all in and then been gone like smoke on the breeze. Tsubaki gave her the impression that this was a rather impressive feat. Vanishing out from under a devil's nose was no small feat for a human, but it matched his personality. From what Tsubaki said, Naruto was a free-spirited, fun-loving person who was driven by his own wants and desires. He was intelligent and, if Tsubaki's hunch was correct, powerful. Her queen hadn't been able to pinpoint it, but she claimed that something was different about the new student. Sona was inclined to agree. Naruto was certainly an odd individual. She would be watching him very closely. After all, she still had a lot of room in her peerage. Rias wasn't the only one who needed members. Sona reached the door to the student council room and opened it. She stepped through and screamed as freezing cold water drenched her. Then she was bopped upside the head as a plastic bucket bounced off her. She stood there, completely frozen for several moments, unable to comprehend what had happened. President? Tsubaki asked hesitantly. Find him, Sona growled. Find whoever the hell set this up. I want him hogtied on my desk inside the hour. Yes, President. Tsubaki entered the room, looking for clues. At the same time, Sona closed the door with a loud snap. Then she created a magic circle above herself and used it to instantly dry her clothes. When that was done, she joined her queen in the search for evidence. Naruto snickered to himself as he watched Sona get drenched in cold water. They couldn't find him, of course, even though he was in the same room. He was too good at hiding his presence from them. One of the benefits of being part vampire. The elusive race of bloodsuckers were expert in evasion and stealth. Hiding even his outrageously large presence was child's play. Especially considering that the two girls likely weren't looking for magical tampering. He grinned as he watched them. He'd been expecting shock from Sona, but not quite that reaction. Apparently her pride as a high-class devil had been wounded. It was a real shame they wouldn't catch him, unless he wanted to be caught. There was always that, but for now he was happy, playing tricks on the poor unsuspecting devils. Tsubaki searched the room for clues, but soon found herself in a sticky situation, literally. Someone had dabbed a strong adhesive onto the undersides of every drawer handle and all the cabinets. The results were her hands being liberally coated in the sticky clear substance. She immediately thought it was super glue, but it wasn't drying until it came in contact with her skin, which meant it was either heat or moisture activated. She fumbled as she accidentally placed her hand on top of Sona's desk only to have her hand stick there. Her scowl deepened as she yanked upwards. The glue held, and so did the table. However, her momentum brought her crashing back with the table on top of her. She grunted in annoyance as Sona moved over to her. Quote, "What happened?" "Glue," she responded. "Glue has been put on all the drawer and cabinet handles." "What the hell?" Sona was looking down to where her feet were now firmly glued to the floor. Apparently whatever the adhesive was, had been dribbled in select places to entrap them. She cursed under her breath and attempted to yank free, succeeding but suffering the same fate as her queen. Her overzealous yank removed her shoe and sent her careening backwards to land flat on her back. Sona experienced the unpleasant feeling of some sticky substance clinging to her right arm, her leg, just below her skirt, and soaking into her hair. Naruto restrained the urge to chuckle evilly. Sona had just gone and glued herself to the floor, priceless. Hee hee. I knew this place would be fun. Oh, the expression on her face. She would murder me if she found out. Guess I should get going before she starts getting pissed. He moved silently through the room, dropping a candy wrapper in one particular puddle of glue. Sona and Tsubaki didn't even notice the quiescent shadow, sliding past them and out of the room. However, a full half an hour later they did notice the peppermint wrapper lying conspicuously near one wall in a puddle of glue. It was the same kind of candy that Saji was constantly driving them all crazy with, the constant crunching sound which drove them insane while they tried to finish their paperwork. The same kind of candy that had been banned due to this annoyance. Sona and Tsubaki, to put it lightly, were livid. There was a commotion in the halls near the second-year locker rooms. Kiba, knight of Rias's peerage, had found himself mobbed by 7 different girls. At first he'd been confused. This confusion had quickly turned into abject horror. All of them, 2 first years, a second year, and 4 third years had letters, addressed to them, from him. Oh, hell, Kiba, is it true that you've been watching me practice a track? Did you really mean what you said about wearing tighter clothes? Kiba-kun, you actually like magic girls too. Can you go to the Magic Girl Con next week? Are you sure you only want red panties for your art project? I have plenty of other colors. Did you actually ask me out on a date? Oh, no. Not this, what is happening? I've never even said hello to half of you. His thoughts ran wild. He must have been pranked. This was all some elaborate setup. These girls never got the letters from him. They must be faking to get revenge for ignoring all the girls in class. Frantically he went about on damage control, but the odds were against him. And that's when he looked up and saw a blonde girl with long pigtails running up to him, her shirt scandalously short and her bust barely contained in a too-tight top. She skipped along until she was right next to him, crowding out the other girls. Kiba-kun, she shouted and leapt at him, wrapping her slender yet extremely strong arms around him. He found himself hugged in an iron grip as the girl panted a kiss on his lips and said, "Don't forget about coming over to my place later." Then she was off again, skipping down the hall and out of sight. Still reeling from the kiss he looked back to the 7 girls and an old American song about 7 women and stoning came to mind. He recoiled away from the sheer volume of killing intent that suddenly filled the school hallway. He coughed, now. That wasn't what it looked like. Really? Are we supposed to believe that? Do you think I'm stupid? I call bullshit. I think the pretty boy is getting too big for his britches. Yeah, me too. I think he needs a little help so he doesn't forget about his girlfriend. Kiba turned even as the girls lunged. Too slow. Must escape. Then they fell upon him like ravening wolves. Kiba took his beating while he silently cursed the blonde girl who had made things oh so much worse. I will get my revenge for this. Naruto walked along the hall to the academy lunchroom, not having any experience with the school yet. He would go there to eat this time. Later he'd find some place that was secluded enough for his tastes. Seeing how he was a vampire he needed to drink a certain amount of blood and that couldn't be done safely in a school with devils. They would smell blood from across a room or even further. This time he would just have to go without. Although, if I can take one of those girls for my own I could get fresh blood. He closed his eyes in expectation of it. Fresh blood was 5 times as good as refrigerated. First of all it was hot and thicker when it came from the artery directly. Second it was tastier. He didn't know why, but it was. And last he could absorb the magical energy from his victims that way. It wasn't nearly as fast as if he used his sacred gear, but it was still invigorating, a rush of power that made it more than addicting. And that wasn't even counting how it would feel to be drinking from a beautiful girl, lips pressed to her neck, her mouth open in a silent moan. He sighed dreamily and opened his eyes, turning into the lunchroom. It was filled with students from every grade. Most were too engrossed in their meals or conversations to notice him, but he still drew plenty of attention as it was, particularly from Sona and her peerage. Or, at least the members who were there. At one table were Sona, Tsubaki, Saji, and a girl with long white wavy hair. He didn't know her name. He realized they were looking at him curiously as he made his way into the cafeteria. Should I? I guess it couldn't hurt to go over. Might even be able to tease them a bit. He changed direction and meandered across the room to their table. Sona's eyes tracked him behind her glasses, calculated. Hello, mind if I sit? He asked politely. Sona shook her head. Feel free to join us, Namikaze-san. Feel free to call me Naruto. I get enough of the last names at home. He didn't particularly like it when people addressed him so formally. It made him uncomfortable, regardless how well his mother drilled proper language and manners into him. Very well, Naruto-san. Her violet eyes tracked over him, getting a better picture as he seated himself. I hope you are enjoying yourself here. It's interesting, at least in comparison to what I'm used to. He said truthfully. Sona raised one eyebrow in question. You're the first boy I've encountered so far who prefers school over other activities. It's boring back home. My mom is always working on business and my annoying uncle is constantly trying to rile me up. He sighed. I just had to get out for a while. Therefore, I enrolled here. So you were homeschooled, I take it? You could say that. Dad was a really great teacher. I skipped quite a few grades. He smirked. Just between you and me, I could probably pass every test in this school without studying. Naruto leaned back, but then it would be over and I'd have to find something else to do. Sona smirked. Like get a job? No, don't need one. I have plenty of money. Although, I suppose I'll have to find something to interest me. Can't just spend the rest of my life studying obscure religious texts like some monk in a monastery. All of the devils stiffened, but he pretended not to notice. Anyway, since I'm new to this town, I was wondering if you knew anything fun to do? Besides studying obscure religious texts. Sona clarified. Exactly. Naruto grinned and almost immediately realized it was the wrong thing to do. His fangs were still extremely long in comparison to most people and devils were nothing if not observant. Wow, look at those? Are those implants? This was Saji, staring wide-eyed at his fangs. Naruto snapped his mouth shut and chuckled uneasily. Sorry about that. It's just I'm not used to being around other kids my age. They're actually a mutation. I was born with them. Most people are kind of freaked out by it. He scratched the back of his head nervously. He was a good liar. Excellent actually. Just not with devils. That's interesting, Sona muttered. Must be hard to eat with those in the way. I know, it sucks. Sona blinked, Tsubaki gaped at him, and Saji laughed out loud. Naruto grinned again, realizing he'd made an inadvertent vampire joke. He wondered if it would make them more suspicious or help diffuse the situation. Naruto hoped for the latter as Sona was eyeing him with some suspicion. She acts like she's onto me, but she might just be trying to be extra cautious. And she'd probably still tense after the prank I pulled. Naruto glanced at Saji, who didn't look the worse for wear, despite the incriminating evidence he'd left for them to wonder just how much punishment you had to take on a regular basis to act normal afterwards. Or maybe they haven't decided to pass judgment on him yet. Makes me wonder. Naruto opened his lunch and pulled out an apple. It was bright red and shiny. A thought invaded his mind. Devils and an apple, the forbidden fruit. I wonder if I should make things interesting and make sure I always have an apple on me no matter how ridiculous the situation it is. Then I can keep a constant stream of bad vampire puns mixed with references to old religious books. That would help me develop a school persona. He eyed Sona as he bit into the apple with an audible crunch. She frowned and he grinned, chewing slowly. This is going to be a fun year. Rainier walked along the street, searching for her target. It wouldn't be too long. She would find him no problem. And then he would act all sweet and nice and innocent. She would ask him out and he'd be shocked. The pervert wouldn't even hesitate. He'd say yes. Then, she would let him take her out, then she'd kill him. It was all planned out in her mind. Her boss had given her some discretion on how to kill the sacred gear user. The only points that were universal were the need for a corpse and for that corpse to be Issei Hyodo's. She sighed, don't really understand why I'm wasting my time on a weak human who hasn't even manifested his sacred gear yet. What's the deal with that? I could be looking for that nun right now, but no. I'm on hunting duty. And he's not even a devil. She grumbled to herself as she turned the corner onto the overpass where Issei should have been. He always took the same route going home and he usually stopped to look out over the bridge for a bit before going on. It would be the perfect opportunity. Rainier felt herself dragged backwards and upwards. She struggled to rein in the urge to thrust a light spear behind her. She was a human, not a fallen angel. If she let it slip, what she might as well sign her own death certificate. There were too many devils in the area to risk revealing what she really was. Letting herself give a short cry, she struggled weakly to escape. It would still feel like the most lively human girl in the world, but whatever had her wasn't human. She could feel that much. It probably wouldn't realize that she was too strong to be human herself. Then she realized something strange. The world around her seemed to be blurring, disappearing or contorting. Rainier twisted and fell to her butt on a smooth surface. She was no longer on a street corner. Now she was sitting in a medium-sized room. Her violet eyes took in the surroundings. It looked like the typical hotel room. A few dressers, a chest and a bed. Plus a door that presumably led to the bathroom. She saw no trace of another being there. What the hell? Where am I? You're being pretty, Clam, aren't you? I mean, I just bent the fabric of reality to bring you here and you ask that? I was expecting frantic pleading for your life or something. Rainier froze. The voice came from behind her. It was deep and strong and sensual in a purring sort of way. She whipped around. Sitting behind her with his back against the wall was a young man. He looked about her own age, but he was blonde with tanned skin and deep sapphire eyes. Her cheeks turned pink as she took in his form. He was devilishly handsome, right down to the black marks running back towards his strong jaw. The slitted pupils in his eyes were a dead giveaway to somewhat less than human heritage, and not to mention the fangs which poked out from his top lip. A burst of warmth lit a fire in her chest. She instinctively wanted to keep it together. Now isn't the time to give in to my stupid urges. Who is this guy and what does he want with me? Does he know what I am? Rainier cursed the fact that her patron's sin was lust. She was always weak to handsome men, and now was not the time to get hot under the collar. This guy was almost certainly a devil and would likely kill her if he even suspected what she was. After all, this was a devil-owned town and Fallen weren't welcome without permission. Crow, got your tongue fallen? She winced. He knew. I don't know what you're talking about. Blue eyes regarded her coolly, sending a shiver down her spine. Now there isn't any point in trying to lie to me. I followed you, ya know. When I smelled you just after lunch I decided to follow you. I didn't know what a Fallen was doing here, since this is like the most devil-influenced town in the country, which is still human-owned. I figured you were going to do something unpleasant to that poor kid, so I grabbed you. He grinned, showing off his long fangs. Besides, I'm still thirsty and I've never tried Fallen before. Rainier gritted her teeth. The way he said that just made her body tingle. When did I get so weak? Or is he just strong enough to make me react to him? And if he is that strong, how did I not notice him? Anyone that strong would stick out like a sore thumb. I don't even remember seeing this guy before? Confused Fallen Chan? He asked lazily. Who are you? Oh, now that there is what I like to call confidential information, ya know. I could tell you, but then I'd have to find some way to prevent you spilling the beans. His grin widened as if in anticipation of silencing her permanently regardless. You mean killing me? She stated bluntly. Well, if you insist I need to kill you to keep something secret, then you must be one of those songbirds. What did my mom call Fallen who couldn't keep themselves from repeating everything that someone else told them? Oh, I think she called them parrots? He shrugged dismissively. Other than being a devil, there really isn't much you can really say about me, so I have no reason to kill you. Light glinted on his pearly white fangs as he continued, unless you give me a reason. Rainier shifted backwards a bit, needing to put more space between them. If her lust got the better of her, she would be in a very difficult situation. She didn't like devils, but she wasn't at all sure she could resist if he tried something on her. I have a job to do. If I don't get it done, I'm dead. But this devil might just kill me here. I have no way of knowing if he intends on killing me once he has whatever he wants. I'm serious about not killing you. In case you were still wondering. But there is something I wanted from you. Did he just read my mind? He leaned forward and smiled. I know you're probably freaked out right now, but if you give me a few things I want, you can go free as a bird. Just make sure you don't squawk and we'll do fine. What do you want? She asked hesitantly. Oh, well, a few things. First, I wanted to know what you Fallen are doing here in Kuo Town. Mainly because there are a few people looking for me, and if you cause a big stir here, I'm going to have to beat a hasty retreat. Second, I want you to stop trying to kill people. Especially students at a school that I attend. That will cause enough problems on its own, but I'm pretty sure that the devils in the school are keeping an eye on your target. Rainier went pale as he continued. The last thing I needed, well, let's not bother talking about it since you're not leaving this room till I get it. A fiendish smirk crossed his lips as he lunged forward. She tried to move out of the way, but it didn't do any good. He was on top of her in a flash. His powerful muscles held her to the floor like iron manacles. Damn, he was strong. She struggled to break free, but it didn't do any good. He was holding her effortlessly, still smirking down at her. Come on, Fallen Chan. It'll feel better if you just relax. His face dipped down, nearing her neck. A soft bit at her skin caused her face to burn crimson and her instincts roared back, demanding to let him ravish her. Rainier gave in to the rapidly building pleasure. She allowed herself to go limp under him while she gazed into his slitted eyes. That's better, he growled as he bent down again, pushing his face into the crook of her neck. A moan escaped her as she felt his lips kissing her throbbing artery. Then pain bit sharply as his fangs plunged deep into her flesh. His hands, gripping her arms, tightened as his lithe body pressed down. She couldn't fight him. Her core was hot and the pain excited her. He was drinking her blood. What the fuck? He isn't a devil. He's a vampire. The thought was unexpectedly pleasant. Probably because it felt so good. His fangs sent lances of pain through her neck and shoulder, but at the same time the contact was driving her out of her mind. Rainier gasped as she lost control of her powers, her illusion shattering. She felt him withdraw as a tearing sound filled the room. Her wings were free, but that small relief wasn't noticeable. Her old proportions had returned and these clothes were now uncomfortably tight. One finger flicked her and sent her back into an arch. Now Fallen Chan, I've had my little taste, and I do mean little. So now I'd like my questions answered. If you're helpful, I might help you with your problem. He smiled down at her, showing off his bloody fangs. Rainier felt his fingers trace up the slope of her breast, barely hindered by the straining fabric, to where he'd bitten. Then he held 2 fingers to the puncture wounds. The sudden pain turned quickly into pleasure, drawing a whimper from her. She closed her eyes, wanting to savor the sensation before he withdrew again. But he didn't. What he did do was proceed to rub his fingers back and forth while leaking something warm into her. It felt like he was channeling magical energy, except for some reason he wasn't using a magic circle. And it was amazing, like she suddenly dropped into a hot spring. First question, and do answer quickly or I might retract my aura. What is your name? Rainier. She managed to say it without moaning. Not focusing on the pleasure was as hard. Next question. How many fallen are in the area with you and what are their names? He moved and his other hand caressed her thigh, moving up under her skirt, tempting her. She struggled to recall their names through the haze of pleasure and annoyance. Couldn't he just get it over with and stop torturing her? There are 3 others. Middled, Kara, Warner, and Donaseek. No others? He raised an eyebrow. You must have been very confident in your skills, thinking that 4 fallen could infiltrate Kuo town and kill someone without getting caught. Tell me what your purpose here was. To kill a nun. There's a girl coming to town shortly. We were told she possessed the rings of twilight healing. I was to extract them and seal them inside myself for later use. Rainier bit back a moan as his hand smoothed over her thigh, coming to rest over her panties, which he rubbed experimentally. And why target that boy? Rainier mumbled, a threat. Has a sacred gear. Boss wanted him dead just in case. Good. Now about your friends. Do you care for any of your fallen angels? Not my friends, she managed to say. Kara Warner? She's all right. He hummed in thought. Okay, so you wouldn't mind if those other 2 died, right? He sounded a bit too pleased by that. No. Excellent. Then I'll have something to occupy me other than school and messing with the devils around town. A curious expression came over him. I was just thinking, Fallen Chan. I'm not going to let your friends kill anyone, and so your mission is almost defiantly going to be a failure. I bet your boss won't be too happy about that. He wouldn't, she admitted. Although in reality he'd most likely kill them for their failure. Okay then, I have a proposition for you. Rainier, you become my servant and do anything I want. And in exchange, I'll make sure your boss never kills you for this failure. Abruptly all pleasure she was feeling vanished, leaving her quite cold under him. He pulled back, releasing her. Bewildered, she sat up, clutching at her neck where there wasn't even a ghost of warmth. She saw her tormentor sitting against the wall again, grin gone as well. What was? I withdrew my power from you and stopped pleasuring you in any way. He shrugged. I asked you a serious question just now. I could have made you answer in the affirmative using your lust, but then it wouldn't mean anything. And you'd probably hate me afterwards for taking advantage of your weakness. So I pulled back so you can think about it yourself. He crossed his arms as a small smile found its way to his lips again. Rainier just had one question. Why? Oh, for quite a few reasons actually. One of them is simple. I'm what you might call a, seducer. At least that's what my godfather called me. I take great pleasure in breaking down people's walls. If you're shy, I get a kick out of opening you up. If you're a bitch, I'll just make me want to cut you open to show your sensitive side. If, like you, I think you need to have your goals readjusted, I'll readjust them. I like you. Don't ask me why. Some people I like and some people I don't. I see you as a good girl, so I decided to act. He scratched his chin and pondered his next words for a moment, then said, another reason for having you serve me is a wealth of information on the fallen. I've been stuck at my home since I was born. I haven't really been out of the house my whole life until now. So I need someone who is willing to tell me what I want to know, and yet keep my own whereabouts secret. Then there's the part where I think you're attractive and I wouldn't at all mind being able to drink your blood whenever I get thirsty. His small smile widened into a feral grin. I wouldn't mind doing other things, with you, if you wanted. Rainier blinked. You're being honest? What reason would I have not to be? I mean, unless I'm one of those sick bastards who gets pleasure out of breaking people's spirits. I could be one of them. He shrugged again as if saying, you never know. She frowned. She knew that it was entirely possible. Her boss was actually just that kind of man. But was this guy one of them? He'd practically kidnapped her right before she was about to talk to her target. So he obviously had some concern for him, or was telling the truth about not wanting attention drawn to him, or the town in which he was living. She supposed that he might be allied with the devils here, and this was her interrogation before he handed her over to them. This might be his way of offering her a safe way out. That was of course assuming that he and the devils were working together. There was also the possibility that he just wanted to get her under his control for a steady supply of blood. She knew a vampire who worked for the Gregories. He was a foul-mouthed little bloodsucker, but he certainly could give her a run for her money. Provided he drank fresh blood once a week. She knew that to stay healthy vampires usually needed to drink once every 2 days. And to be satisfied twice a day was actually more realistic. Then again, would I mind if he bit me? It felt so good the first time, and he said he only took a bit. It might be worthwhile joining him if he was interested in drinking my blood often. Rainier briefly wondered where her complete lack of loyalty to her own faction came from, but dismissed it. She was under no illusions about her place in the ranks. She had only one set of wings and was under the command of a fallen who wanted to restart the endless war between factions. Without any connections or way to get out from under his direct command, she would eventually be punished along with him. Azazel would punish them all, even though many of them were only following orders. She probably wouldn't be too bad off, but that was assuming she lived long enough to be punished in the first place. Then she would likely be relegated to some position even lower than the one she had now, with no opportunity to advance for a few hundred years, at least. All in all, it was one of those, damned if you do, damned if you don't, situations she heard so much about from Donaseek. Now there was someone who had more than his fair share of screw-ups to his name. And she'd be right there with him. Rainier looked into the blue-slitted eyes that were offering a different kind of servitude. And she had to wonder, was it better to go with the hell that she knew was coming, or the hell she knew nothing about? He hadn't even revealed his name. Everything she had on the guy was barely circumstantial. He was a vampire. He was stronger, much stronger than her. And he seemed to be moderately sane, if mischievous. She made up her mind. May I at least know the name of my new master? Naruto. Naruto what? He smirked and leaned forward. Before you know my true nature, I need more than just you asking a leading question. I need something that guarantees your service. What is that? She shifted uneasily. I don't know how vampires do that sort of thing. Well, if I did it the vamp way, I would just drink enough of your blood and magic to weaken your soul ties. Then I would inject trace amounts of my own soul into yours. Being more powerful than you, my soul shard as it's called, would dominate your mind and make you utterly subservient to me. Your connection to me would make sure I didn't even have to speak for you to know what I desired. Rainier gulped. But, that isn't any fun. I don't want some mindless lackey. I don't need some scantily clad maid, fuck toy. I want a servant who can think for herself and can improve in her abilities, thus being able to help me to a greater extent. Using vampire methods wouldn't be to my, or your benefit. He leaned back. I could use the human magician's method of gaining subservience. I know one in particular which would be very effective. But again, it's damaging to the servant. Naruto sighed. That leaves only one. I'll use the devil method. But not the new devil method. I don't have a set of evil pieces, so that option is out. Rainier watched as he raised a hand and used one finger, now tipped with razor-sharp claw, to slice open his wrist. Naruto spoke as he moved towards her. This is an old way of enslaving others that the original devil families used, except my father altered it. Instead of killing you when you disobey, it merely paralyzes you or sends a jolt of my magical energy through your system, rendering you, He stopped for a second while she looked up at him. His eyes met hers again as he pushed her down on the floor with one hand. That's it. It would render you incapable of disobeying me for quite a while. Since you are a fallen with your primary sin being lust, anyone who can dominate your power completely as I can will be able to force you to do what I want. He winked at her, and it would be very enjoyable, not being able to disobey. She stifled a complaint as her wings were stuck between her back and the cold floor. Naruto moved his claw to his still bleeding wrist and dipped it in blood. Seeing her look of faint disgust, he sighed. Don't be so dramatic. This little scratch is nothing. I could heal instantly at will. However, I need some kind of medium to write with, and I don't see any magically infused ink lying around here. Do you? She shook her head. Good, now then. This ritual I'm using will bind you to me indefinitely. Basically, you will be bound to me for the rest of your life, unless I die or decide to use another ritual to nullify the first. He looked down at her, frowning. Almost forgot. Needs to be on bare skin. With a judicious tug, he ripped the front of her schoolgirl uniform open. She mentally approved of this, both because she preferred to be wearing less clothing anyway, and because the uniform was exceedingly tight on her original form's more gifted body. She just wished he'd pull the damn bra off, since that extra cup size difference between her human form and her fallen one was starting to hurt. Naruto either needed more space to write, or he sensed this unspoken request because his claw snicked through the thin fabric of her bra. The two sides flying open at the elastic was severed. Then without further ado, he began to write. It tickled and she had to bite her lip to prevent from giggling. She refused to do that in this situation. His claw traced a circle that started just above her belly button and then traced around her sides and went slightly under her breasts. All the while he continued to refresh the ink from his wrist. Several minutes went by before he was done. Rainier was about to sit up and look at what he'd wrought when he leaned over her again. Their eyes met for a second. This is either going to feel like the best orgasm of your life, or it's going to feel like being ripped apart by an angry fire elemental. He said calmly, but it's necessary, so on the off chance it's the latter. Naruto kissed her on the lips, earning a short whimper from her as her fallen instincts once again prompted her to demand further action. However, as she tried to push up to return the kiss, she found herself quite literally paralyzed. I used a bit of vampire magic to freeze you. That way you don't interrupt the ritual when it starts. You know, screaming, or thrashing. The usual stuff. He tilted his head to the side, smiling warmly. Now this is going to hurt a little. Naruto leaned down once more and whispered in her ear. I'm using yokai energy, called chakra, to complete the seal. Don't ask me why, since I don't know, but it requires that I bite you for some reason. She attempted to settle herself, imagining that it would hurt many times worse than the bite he'd inflicted earlier, but when she felt his teeth sinking into her, all she felt was a massive burst of some energy. Not fallen or devil, or even vampire. It poured through her, seeming to pool in her stomach. That's where he was writing. What is going? Rainier cried out as white fire erupted from every cell in her body, and she realized that Naruto's analogy was perfectly accurate. Being torn apart by fire elementals just about summed it up. She screamed even as she was unable to move. She screamed herself hoarse as lines of liquid fire spread and shifted over her skin, interlocking and searing themselves into her. It seemed to go on forever, until it quite suddenly bit off like a badly tuned piano being hit with a sledgehammer. At the same time, whatever paralyzation spell Naruto had placed on her wore off, and he quickly pulled back. She gasped, taking in a huge breath and using it to let out one last scream as her tenderized nerves recovered. Then she just lay there, waiting. You okay? Do I fucking look okay? Well, Rainier threw herself into a sitting position, lining up her fist to knock his face in, but quickly rethought the action as a wave of pure ecstasy overwhelmed her. She fell back with a muffled moan. And that would be the yokai energy kicking in. Any time to try to do something to consciously hurt me, directly or indirectly, the seal will activate and flood your body with yokai energy. Now for someone like me who has the ability to absorb any kind of energy from just about anything, there isn't much I don't know about the weaknesses of the different factions. He held up a hand within view, counting off each finger. 1. Angels are weak against vampires and certain devils. 2. Most devils are weak against angels and some fallen. 3. Vampires are weak against devils. 4. Yokai are weak against angels. 5. Fallen are weak against yokai. He smirked. Oh, and all of them are weak against dragons. When yokai energy interacts with the nervous system in fallen angels, it causes the signals to get mixed up. Depending on how it's used, it can cause immense pain or debilitating pleasure. It also widely depends on the kind of yokai and by extension the kind of chakra they use. I can purify yokai into a yin and yang chakra, which can then be used in jutsu. Naruto gestured to himself. Me and my father both have this ability. And my dad is one of the few people to ever use jutsu, which are special techniques that can only be accessed using pure chakra. Rainier managed to sit up again. What are you? I'm half devil, 1/4 vampire, and 1/4 human. And, who are you? She frowned. Now that you've sealed me or whatever. My full name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze Vosk. Uzumaki from my mother who is a full-blooded devil. Namikaze from the human side of my dad. And Vosk from the vampire side. Rainare's eyes were wide. But, Namikaze, that's the name of the... She gulped, the human clan that used real sorcery. And Vosk that's like royalty in the vampire families. You're right on both counts, but you didn't comment on my Uzumaki heritage. I've never heard of them, she admitted. Oh, well, allow me to enlighten you now that you can't tell my secret. Uzumaki is the human name given to the great devil house of Lucifer. Rainare's eyes bugged out of her skull. Lucifer? Yep, pretty cool huh? I'm a noble on my human side. A side branch royal on my vampire side. And main branch royalty on my devil side. Actually, if you want to be technical about it, I'm Lucifer's heir. Naruto flashed his trademark grin and put his hands behind his head. Feel free to bow. She blinked and then ducked her head. Yes, Lucifer-sama? He coughed. Okay, just kidding about the bowing part. You never have to bow or call me sama unless I end up taking you to meet someone official. I hate honorifics. I get enough of that from my stupid uncle. Who is? She wasn't quite sure. She wanted to know which stupid uncle he was referring to. Receive him, Lucifer. He's my mom's cousin. He's also a jackass, but I don't want to talk about him. I left home because I was tired of being locked up like some old artifact. I needed to stretch my legs, find adventure, commit genocide, and get a harem. You know, the usual stuff that Lucifer's heirs want to do when they grow up. Committing genocide doesn't seem like something you would do. Yeah, I was kidding about that part. But I've been seriously thinking about building a harem and the adventure is a definite yes. Rainier looked up at his puzzled. So, what are you doing at the moment, and where do I fit in the scheme of things now? Naruto gestured to her and Rainier suddenly felt herself sliding across the floor to him. She squealed as his arms wrapped around her, holding her tightly. A shiver ran down her spine as he growled in her ear. Right now, I'm just happy I can drink that fallen blood of yours. She moaned slightly as he bit her neck softly. It's better than anything I've had before. Rainier bit her lip to stop her reaction to his hands which had moved up under her breasts, cupping them lightly. Feel free to make those wonderful noises, ya know. With that his fangs were buried in the hollow of her neck. Rainier closed her eyes and let herself relax against his broad chest as he drank deeply. Rainier moaned as sharp fangs slid slowly into her throat. Heat and pleasure, more than she could imagine. It washed through her, bringing a crimson blush to her cheeks as a hard body pressed against her, pinning her in place. She didn't fight back, only adjusting herself to be more comfortable. She wouldn't admit it, but this feeding felt almost as good as, which was great because her master was almost always thirsty. Naruto pulled back, licking at the small wound to close it. His eyes, usually a crystal blue, were still the color of blood. The black slit pupil making him seem like a demon as he smirked. It's almost like you wanted me to bite you that time, Ra-chan? He growled slightly. Could it be you're addicted to the feeling of being bitten? She didn't respond, but brought her hand to check the bite mark. Just like the last 3 times there was nothing there. His strange ability to mix different energies confounding her yet again. Rainier sighed and dropped her hands and looked into his eyes as they returned to the cerulean orbs of his human form. You're still not answering, Ra-chan. Naruto pushed forward again, his fangs sinking into flesh again. She gasped as he sucked hard once before releasing her. Well, this Uzumaki wants to know. Yes? Okay, now, we have to get to class. Naruto chuckled. Now that just isn't true. He brought his face close to hers, showing off his still dangerously long fangs. I have that little situation taken care of at the moment. What do you mean by that? Simple. He grinned. We are in class right now. You just don't know it. Rainier blinked in confusion. You set up an illusion? How? And won't the devils here notice? Come on, don't you have any faith in me? If I can forcibly bind a fallen angel to myself using only a bit of blood and magic, I think I can fool a few devils. Just because they're related to the current Devil Kings doesn't mean they can detect my magic. And besides, school is interesting and all, but we have business to attend to today. And since you were bound to me recently, it's better if you come with. Why did we go to school until lunch, you mean? Only because I wanted to check up on a few plans I have in motion. We're free to go now. She blinked. What plans? For instance, ruining that pretty boy devil's reputation. I've been steadily making him look like a player by delivering forged letters to all of his biggest fangirls, having him accosted by random girls that are different every time. This last time I actually cast an illusion on him. He outright kissed one of them in class. Naruto closed his eye remembering it. Ah, that stunned hopeful look on her face was priceless. And his was like shock, confusion, and horror all rolled into one. You're evil. Naruto's lips twisted into a smirk. Well, I am the heir or Lucifer. Anyway, unless you really want me to drain every last drop of your blood, we should get going. He made it sound like he would be more than happy to do that, which he also was. Yo, you're right, let's go. Then follow me. Issei Hyodo was not happy. Why? You may ask this kind of question. Why would he not be happy when he, the self-proclaimed greatest pervert alive, was being straddled by a girl? Well, it might have something to do with the fact that he had a large glowing spear made of pure crackling energy sticking in his chest. And this girl was currently twisting it cruelly. Ah, poor human scum. I honestly thought you'd put up a fight, but it seems like you were just a tease. I didn't see any sign of that supposed sacred gear. And you're weak? She pouted cutely. Actually, I should have dragged you back with me instead of killing you. Then I just take your sacred gear, whatever it is. Issei screamed hollowly. The light spear was the one lung, making speech, and even agonized shouts difficult. Wow, you're one whiny human. I take back what I said about you being weak. If you still have enough in you to scream, I'm impressed. She raised one finger to her chin in a pose of intense thought. But now that I think about it, you're still pretty pathetic. When I asked you to come and help me, I didn't even have to fake crying. You just followed like some lost puppy. Bye. Tch. Ooh, did I just hear that? The human called me a bad name. I think the dirty human needs to be punished. You're obviously enjoying this too much. Issei gasped as the spear was pulled free with a sick squelch and plunged back into his stomach, tearing the flesh with ease. Blood started to pour into his half-cauterized lungs, blocking further speaking completely. Now, her voice went low, harsh. You fucking human. You must have done something to Rainier. She was going to kill you this weekend, but you did something. She never came back after she was supposed to ask you out on that date. Donaseek and Calawarner can't find her anywhere, and it's all your fault. She sneered and twisted the blade of light, angling it upward towards his heart. Just die, you filth, and then I can go finish looking for whatever is left of my friend. Issei's mind clouded as he felt the blade leave him again. He knew he was bleeding out. His head fell to the side, his eyes catching on the spreading pool of blood under him. Is this the end of me? I didn't even have a girlfriend. I'm pathetic, just like she said. Standing in front of Naruto, naked, Rainier could only feel uncomfortable. She looked down at the floor as his eyes examined her closely. His eyebrows were furrowed as he took in every detail of her nude form. Are you done yet? She asked, fidgeting. She didn't know why she was so shy around him at the moment. She was a fallen angel, damn it. Her sin was lust. So why was she so awkward? Not yet, Ra-chan. And why do you call me Ra-chan? That's the name of an Egyptian god. She didn't know what to think of her nickname, or maybe it was a pet name. It was hard to tell sometimes how he thought of her. Scratch that. It was nigh impossible to understand how he thought, period. He was smart, but didn't seem to care enough to use his intelligence. He was practical, but acted without thinking, seemingly on purpose, and often did the opposite of what was needed simply because he thought it was more interesting. Not to mention the mixed signals he kept sending her. Sometimes she felt like he cared for her, even deeply, but just as often she felt every inch his servant. He moved around her like she was his, as if she belonged to him completely. To an extent that appeared possessive. Yet he also didn't care what she did in her free time, as long as it didn't damage him. It was only a day and a half since she'd been, what was the description? Taken? She'd decided that it would be in her best interest to serve him, but she was conflicted now. How did he truly see her? Rainier blinked as she realized that Naruto had completely ignored her question in favor of leaving the private room where they'd been. She huffed and looked around the room. It was a large dressing room in the back of a clothing store. They were in the underworld, a place she'd only ventured once and not since she was a pure angel. That was on a raid shortly before she'd fallen to her lust. She let out another long breath as she waited for her master to return. She sure wasn't leaving this room alone. There were devils swarming around everywhere in this town. Literally, this was a devil town. They'd received quite a few odd and hostile looks from the locals, and many curious glances when they noted how subservient she was acting. Especially with her status as a fallen angel. Normally she wouldn't treat him with complete deference, but she decided that pride was best left in the mortal realm. If she wanted to be treated with any measure of fairness, she needed to act as his servant. Otherwise, she had no guarantee that the devils wouldn't try to do her harm. A moment later Naruto returned with a few articles of clothing. She eyed them with a raised eyebrow. He met her gaze with a smirk as he placed them on the lone chair in the room. Am I wearing those outside? Do you have a problem with that? She hesitated at his tone of voice. Well, no, but I didn't think we were coming here so you could show me off in expensive lingerie. And you'd be right, 2 of those are for home. The other one needs to be altered slightly before you wear it. He moved forward and grabbed her hand, pulling her into him. She attempted to rein in her instincts, but he had to go and bite at the nape of her neck, not piercing the skin but sending a jolt of pleasure down her spine. Naruto growled, "Do you have any idea how much I enjoy the fact that your regen factor prevents you from dying of blood loss? It's like a vampire's dream come true." He stroked at her breasts as his lips brushed her skin again. "Just seeing you naked makes me very thirsty, ya know." She went still as his mouth closed over skin and he bit deeply. Rainier strangled her moan before it could leap out of her mouth. What was he thinking? Doing this here was just asking for it. But he didn't seem to care and she was having a hard time resisting him, or her own impulses. While Naruto drank greedily, she slowly lost the strength in her legs. Rainier almost collapsed as he withdrew minutes later. "Damn, you taste good?" He closed his eyes and leaned his head on hers. "All the stupid years drinking blood packs when I could have had fresh blood. You almost sound annoyed, but I am." He moved back, still holding her while she regained her strength. "It's so hard not to take everything and more. You can't imagine how amazing it is. You know, traditionally, royal vampires took everything from their victims, killing them in the process of feeding." Rainier glanced to him as he helped her to the chair where she sat down. "Why?" "Because." His expression turned predatory. Trying to tell a royal vampire to stop drinking when he or she didn't want to, would be as pointless ordering a human to stop breathing. And even if you could do it, it would be just as deadly. You're lucky that vampires of my generation have a lot more restraint than our ancestors. His fangs glinted in the overhead light. Otherwise you'd have been dead the first time we met. A shiver went down her back as he straightened. "Now, you get dressed in the blue and silver dress. When you're done we can head out." "Where exactly are we going?" she asked, curious. "To visit a nice young devil." His eyes flashed red. "Or more precisely, you're going to be visiting a nice young devil. I'll be doing other things." Hours later, Deodora Astaroth was, by far, the most kind and helpful devil Rainier had ever encountered. Only extreme caution and many warnings allowed her to sense the underlying wrongness that the young devil exuded. He was corrupt, evil, and sick in every sense of the word. However, if she hadn't known Naruto and had met the Astaroth heir, she would have proclaimed him to be the kindest, most generous devil in all the underworld. Truly Naruto was a breed apart for being able to see past the impressive facade. I must say Rainier-san, I was surprised that you knew who had supplied the information on the nun's location. I thought my part was anonymous. Deodora smiled winningly even though they both knew he was less surprised and more horrified. While they spoke politely they both knew, though her knowledge was only recently acquired, that he was much less benevolent than he made himself out to be. Pardon me for saying so, my lord. She mentally thanked Calawarner for drilling this sort of servile manner into her as she gave a deep bow. However, both myself and those who serve under me are much better informed than most believe. Knowledge and rank are neither inclusive nor exclusive of each other. And we would be poor servants if we didn't know our employer. Indeed, was all he said as they walked down a long hall to his personal chambers. But correct me if I'm wrong, Rainier-san, but she isn't due to arrive for a few days. That is true, my lord, however it was Donasiku mentioned that we had no way of contacting you or letting you know when we had completed our assigned task. Knowing your enjoyment in such things, we thought it unwise to kill the girl until we were sure of your wishes. Having never heard from you personally, we couldn't know if your orders had been changed in passing to us. He seemed to consider this for several moments, his expression hardly changing. Then he appeared to realize something. Wait, you said that she wasn't due for days, yet you were questioning your ability to get in touch? Does that mean she came early? Rainier nodded, continuing the lies that Naruto had instructed her to use. He wanted her to play him out on a string for as long as possible. And if she could, get him alone in his private rooms. She didn't know why this was important, but apparently it was. Deodora looked excited at this change in plans as he continued to look at the floor in front of them as they walked. Both of them were almost to the large double doors that stood between them and his rooms by the time he looked up. Tell me, what is she like? Rainier blinked and looked away as if thinking. That was one thing Naruto didn't know and therefore couldn't coach her on. However, she had been an Angle once and knew her fair share about nuns. She is very reserved and calm. Innocent to a fault. She wouldn't know evil if it bit her. And she's quite devoted. Really? A barely disguised and highly unpleasant chuckle escaped him before he regained his composure. Yes, that is quite excellent. I will enjoy this even more than I anticipated. Has she kept her long hair? The question wasn't probing. Rainier guessed that he was far too caught up in his perverted fantasies to care about discretion. She answered in what she thought would be the most desirable fashion. Naruto commanded that the devil be kept in good spirits, and so she would tell him whatever she thought he wanted to hear. It's nearly to her rear at this point. And still blonde? She hasn't dyed her hair? A crazed look had entered his eye, making her shift uncomfortably as the double doors opened in front of them. Rainier was struggling to rein in her distaste at this point. The young devil was drooling. She gagged inwardly thinking, he's disgusting. I'd rather bathe in shit than let this twisted man touch me. As blonde as spun gold, my lord. His eyes snapped to the side. Perfect. Not that I mind darker hair, but only 2 of my girls are blonde, you must understand. And none have such beautiful hair as she. As a matter of fact, yours is very nice. Deodora's eyes acquired a gleam that made her skin crawl. Since you are serving me, why don't you help your master? My servants are all off on assignments at the moment. Usually I would keep at least one of them back for entertainment, but alas, duties precede pleasure. She was unable to repress her frown at his crude and thinly veiled request. Naruto hadn't mentioned anything about this. She suspected that he wouldn't have sent her in alone if he knew the Astaroth heir would try to come on to her. And that made for problems. He was a high devil, as young as he was, and he wouldn't take kindly to being denied. Unless he has proper incentive to keep his hands off me. He isn't stupid. The fact that he came up with this plan in the first place proves that he has at least some intelligence. I must apologize, my lord. She flicked her eyes to the side as she bowed deeply. She was in his room, just as Naruto wanted. What now, Naruto-sama? Rainier straightened and spoke coolly, hoping he would buy her excuse. I must decline your offer. You see, I am working for your lordship, however I belong to another. My body is his only. She bowed again, somewhat stiffly as he frowned. A devil? How unfortunate. I could show you such a good time. Surely he isn't someone too important. But he is. 1,000 apologies, but he is above yourself in rank. It was true. Naruto was the heir of Lucifer and therefore above even the 4 devil kings in rank. so she felt it was quite safe to say he was above the devil standing before her. That's highly unlikely. You know who I am. I am the heir of the Astaroth house. Unless you serve ahead of one of the devil houses, I don't see how you could. Rainier noted that he sounded highly miffed, if uneasy. Ah, but you see, she does serve someone higher than you. And technically I am the head of a devil house. Both Rainier and Diodora snapped their heads in the direction of the voice, only to see Naruto. He was standing in the open door to Diodora's private rooms. With a bang, both doors slammed shut and the magical sealing array activated, locking all of them inside. Naruto smirked as he stepped forward, keeping his eyes locked on his fellow devil. Well now, Dio-san, you must be feeling a bit puzzled right now. Naruto chuckled darkly as Diodora stepped backwards. You're the one that they wanted to absorb the energy from that girl. You're Rizavim's nephew. What are you doing here? Naruto paused and struck a thinker's pose. Allow me to enlighten you, Diodora. I am here to kill you. Do try not to run. I might miss and end up making a big mess before connecting. The Astaroth's expression perfectly matched Rainire's as he turned to run. Naruto calmly raised his arms, hands directed at him with fingers curled like claws. Then the entire room was lit up with blinding light as jagged violet lighting shot from his fingertips and tore past the fleeing devil. Diodora turned at the last moment as Naruto adjusted his aim. Suddenly there was a violent hum filling the air as a green barrier interposed itself between them. The next bolt of lightning dissipated into sparks as it hit the livid green magic circle. Diodora laughed. I have power now too. It just takes a second to draw on. You won't defeat me that easy. My power comes directly from Rizavim. Don't be full of yourself, you sick retard. Naruto spat as he vanished into thin air. Fuck! Diodora screamed as lightning crashed into his back, burning a great swath of devastation through him and almost cutting him in half. However, at the last second he flung his arm out straight, launching a green ball of compressed energy. It buzzed towards Naruto, who, smirking again, caught it on his open palm. Maelstrom absorption, draining touch. As they watched, the green sphere increased in size till it was half as wide as he was tall. Then it rapidly shrank, seeming to be siphoned off into emerald streams of energy which wrapped around Naruto, sinking into his skin. A second later it was gone and Naruto's eyes had gone completely black, his skin bleaching to a pallor close to parchment. His smirk morphed into a grin, showing off his razor-sharp fangs. Diodora watched as he collapsed to the ground, his own skin pale as death. How? Naruto didn't respond for a moment. His black eyes closed for a moment before opening. The obsidian color faded back to blue. I recognize this power. This comes from Orpheus. Pity there's so little. If there was a little more, I could work it into my natural chakra reserves. Then I could have a pool of draconic magic to use as I pleased. He sighed. Well, you win some and you lose some. And you, my foul devil friend, need to realize that all those creatures you helped the Chaos Brigade capture were brought to me, and every drop of power or magical energy was taken. I still hold the vast majority of it within me. So even if I couldn't absorb Orpheus's power, I could still win out against it. Now I really would prefer if you die. I'm tired of this supervillain monologue. Naruto's hands rose again and the violet lightning cracked across the space separating them, tearing and ripping Diodora apart. As he screamed, smoke and steam drifted into the air above him, signaling his death. And as a last hurrah, Naruto turned his corpse to ash with a blast of concentrated light energy. Rainier watched in silence as the devil heir to the Astaroth family was reduced to dust and his killer smiled at the murder he'd committed. Well, that was easy. And here I thought he might actually try to use his own magic. I guess he was just too weak without the help. He shrugged as if it was slightly disappointing, but not damaging. Anyway, we need to go before someone shows up. So much holy energy being thrown around will not go unnoticed. Besides, our absence at school will be noted soon. What? How? Why? Rainier shouted, only to find herself being pulled into a tight embrace. Then quite suddenly everything went black. Before she could so much as blink, she found herself standing with Naruto in the school equipment storage room. She looked around as Naruto sniffed appreciatively at her neck. He muttered something along the lines of, "I'll never get tired of this scent," and at last pulled away. "How are we feeling, Ra-chan?" She spluttered, You killed a high devil in his own home. Are you insane? And you You had me there. Someone is going to recognize what happened. No, they won't. He smoothed a hand over her bare shoulder, comforting her. Listen, everything I do for a reason. It might not always be a good reason, or one you agree with, but I'll always have one. Naruto's head tilted to the side as if rethinking that statement. Then again, I sometimes do things for no reason, for a reason. So depending on how you look at it, everything I do could be considered perfectly random. He shook his head. Anyway, the point is this. His death and the way he died served several purposes that benefit the both of us. What purposes? Explain. Okay, first and foremost for you, he was your client for the nun job. It was his actions which led to you coming here and becoming involved in recent events. He was the root cause of this entire situation, excluding my involvement. She nodded. Now consider this from my perspective. I came here wanting to hide out and not cause any big waves. The risk of being found out was too high if I made a commotion, and I can't reveal myself until I have some allies. Deodora's plan was to have you fall and kill a well-known nun and the holder of a powerful sacred gear. How do you think that would be received in a devil-run town? Let me put it this way. It would cause a big wave, especially with two heirs to prominent families living in the area. And my family would have immediately linked this to my recent disappearance because of my tendency to cause trouble. They would have come to investigate, and while I'm confident they couldn't find me, they would be too close for comfort. Naruto saw her nod in understanding again. He smiled and, using one finger that was suddenly tipped with a sharp claw, he cut the straps on her dress. It fell to the floor, leaving her almost naked. Okay, furthermore, that bastard was a member of Chaos Brigade, a terrorist organization that seeks to restore the old Devil Kings to power and restart the endless war between the three factions. My killing him was a favor to the world, and besides, he was a scumbag who takes sick pleasure out of destroying innocent girls and turning them into mindless slaves. That isn't something I'm fond of doing, nor do I care for those who do it themselves. It's disgusting and only proves that you're too weak to demand respect as you are. Anyone who has to butcher another's mind to gain obedience doesn't deserve power in the first place. He frowned dangerously. Which is why I hate my uncle and the rest of the assholes he calls Devil Kings. Naruto raised his arms and bit his thumb, drawing blood over the inside of his wrist. A second later there was a plume of smoke and a neatly folded stack of clothing appeared. Rainier recognized it as her school uniform. At his look she sighed and drew in her wings, shifting into her human form and completely masking her fallen powers. She felt the familiar tightness in her breasts and stomach and legs. I hate this form, she whined. On the contrary, it's very cute. I just want to bite you so bad right now. You should probably get dressed before I decide to sat my thirst again. Using that fallen lightning wasn't easy. She took the clothes from him and dressed as she asked, so why did you want me to do that whole runaround thing with him? Oh, that? The thing is that the death of a devil from an important house causes even bigger waves than a known sacred gear user disappearing. So I needed some way of framing someone else, while not causing a faction war or huge battle to break out over it. I told you to go in there dressed as a powerful fallen might. I cast an illusion on you, by the way. It made it look like you had 6 wings instead of 2. Rainare's eyes widened. That's why he looked so shocked when he first saw me. Correct. And he assumed that you were a lot more powerful than he first thought. But that's beside the point. It wasn't really for his benefit. Really, it was about everyone else. They didn't see my sweet Rainier walking up to speak with Deodora. They saw a powerful and unknown fallen woman visiting a devil lord for some undisclosed reason, which I might add, will cast him in a very bad light. She accepted that as true. Pureblood devils rarely associated with fallen unless they were killing them. As I said, this would reflect badly on him, so he would quickly try to make things more confined and private. So he took you deep into his home to his chambers, where I was able to kill him away from prying eyes. Plus I used all the fallen magic I've taken from drinking your blood and used lightning to fry him to death. This helps in several ways. First, it completely eliminates suspicion of you. As a single-tier fallen angel, you aren't powerful enough to kill a high devil with pure lightning. Second, it puts the blame on some random female high-ranked fallen, of which there are very few. Naruto put his hands together and as smoke enveloped him, leaving him wearing the school uniform as well. You can probably guess that most if not all of the high-ranked female fallen are going to have some proof of being elsewhere at the time, thus Everyone will assume that it was a rogue fallen with a grudge against the Astaroth house. This draws even more attention away from me and my involvement because I had enough time to sneak past all of his defenses without leaving a trace or harming any guards. In effect, we have our perfect assassination with no possibility of being caught. Even if they did somehow suspect two high school students like us, we were in school the whole time. And Rias Gremory as well as Sona's Citri would be able to attest to that. He pulled his fingers through his spiky blonde hair. So to cap it all off, I stay hidden, get a chance to save an innocent girl from a horrible fate, kill an evil bastard who badly needed axing, and I got 2 white costumes for my fallen angel girlfriend to wear. Gee, girl, friend? Naruto raised an eyebrow and pressed forward till his lips were right in her ear. Do you object? Our bond is still fresh and we'll need to stay fairly close to each other for at least a week before it's safe to stray apart. That means at school we'll be together often. I think it's best if we have a good cover, don't you? He nibbled her ear as his hands found her ass through the fabric of her uniform. Besides, you are my little blood raven. If you're my girlfriend, it'll be hard to question us if I decided to kiss that graceful neck of yours. She gasped and murmured assent before letting him pull her into him, his lips touching down the side of her neck before sinking in. Fuck, Naruto, she moaned and let him drink to his heart's content, savoring the pleasure that danced through her system. It was almost 10 minutes before he let her go. Come on, Ra-chan, let's go to class. Oh, okay Naruto-sama. What do you mean it wasn't there? That's exactly what I said. I went back to dispose of the body and it was gone. There was just this big blood stain and nothing else, like he got bored bleeding out and decided to head home. Kalawarner and Middle looked at each other. Issei Hyodo's corpse was gone. The bastard boy with the sacred gear had disappeared, after being stabbed 3 times. Once through each lung and then in the heart. How he was supposed to do anything other than die? They had no idea, but he went somewhere and that meant they were in trouble. As of yet they hadn't revealed their location, but there were 2 strong peerages in town and either one could discover them with relative ease. That's why they'd been relying on Rainier to kill him. She'd been at this longer than anyone, besides Donasek, but he was a crazy bastard with no subtlety.
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.